Whenever someone says they don't have time to do this, I'm like, you do, you're just not prioritizing it.
The reason I work so fucking hard is because I could die any moment. I want to provide for my family, but it's also why I take time off now.
I honestly think self-inquiry, self-reflection is the first thing. We've got to understand, like, why do we do that?
If your relationship's breaking down, you're like, my relationship's breaking down, or I have no time. It's like, that's the after effect, but what's the cause?
I think the first thing is to be comfortable with being by yourself and doing things without anyone else around.
I said, who's going to get it done? All 30 put their hands up. Who's getting it done today? All 30 put their hands up. We get on another call and I'm like, who did it? 3 people put their hands up.
You got to find out why we're doing the things that we're doing, and we do that by...
Introducing Brendan Giebel, a dedicated men's coach, human behavior expert, author, and speaker. As the founder of Advanced Men's Development, Brendan is committed to empowering men to master their minds and overcome self-sabotage, guiding them toward personal and professional success.
All right, so today we have Brendan from Advanced Men's Development. Brother, it's so fucking awesome to have you here. I know you've driven a long way to be on the pod. We're going to be talking all things mental freedom, emotional freedom, business, health, wealth, relationships, ultimately how to be a better fucking man. But before we do that, bro, how you feeling? It's great to have you here.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Always good for a chat, and had a good workout this morning, so ready to roll.
Pumped up. Amazing. So, bro, let's just get straight into it. What is your story? I know that you help men develop themselves, but tell us about like where you started, what you do now, like take us through your journey from before to after and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so I suppose we'll keep it short, but I struggled a lot as a kid. You know, I was very shy, very unconfident. And I can remember sitting on a hill. I went to Ipswich Grammar School, and I was sitting on the hill in about grade 10. And my mates were like talking to girls and stuff, and I was just sitting there like this, and I couldn't say anything. I was like, I wanted to say things, but I couldn't. And I was like, there's something wrong with me. And that's the first time that I had that thought, you know, there's something wrong with me. And then went on a few years, and I was out at the Regatta Hotel too. And I got to this point and I kind of came out of the toilets, and I needed to have, 10 shots of Dutch courage to feel good and have confidence. And so then I got cornered kind of by these 2 attractive girls, and they said, hey, and I just had like this warmth come over me, and I just felt so sick, and then I had to go vomit because I'd made myself so sick. And as you know, in the pub, you cop a lot of shit for throwing up, but it wasn't because I was drinking. And I was like, man, there's something wrong with me. And so then I was like, well, fly in, fly out, that'll fix me, more money, right? And so I went fly in, fly out. Then I developed some pretty severe eating disorders. So I would starve myself, shove my fingers down my throat, do all that kind of stuff, binge eat over 4 or 5 years. And as you can imagine, that all, combined together, I was like, fuck, I don't want to be here anymore. And I lived in a place in South Brisbane, and I nearly jumped off the edge. And I can remember flying back into work, and I'm like, I don't care if this plane, dies, or if I die, this plane goes down. And then in that moment when I was about to jump off, I had this deep voice here. I've heard it many times in breath work and stuff. I don't know where that came from. It wasn't me, that voice. And it said, are you really going to give up that easy? And I just felt like this. I've never felt anything like it. It was just like this thing came through me. And I was like, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm not saying my life changed completely from that, but I just made that decision. That's why I always say to people, just make a fucking decision and your life will change from there. And so from then I went on, and it took me about 6 years to try and do things myself. But I was still very shy, very unconfident, trying to work through things myself and read books. I read, articles and books and all this, but I still didn't really get exactly where I wanted to go. And then I was working down in Adelaide because I was in construction before this, and I'd built myself up to be a senior supervisor. We built, multi-million-dollar projects, like bridge projects and stuff. And I was always like, you should do this, male dominant industry, right? And I found so much enjoyment helping other men. And one guy down there said, you should do this. And it was an NLP and timeline therapy course. First time I've ever, experienced anything like that. And as I said, I was in Adelaide. And then that next thing was the next course they had was in January. So that was December at the time. It was January in Perth. I obviously live in Brisbane. And I had no money to do it then because I'd traveled, I'd, put lots of money on credit cards trying to find myself, traveling. But I just made a decision. I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. And it's funny, when you do that, the universe starts bringing you things, and I found a way to afford it. And that that course literally changed my life when I first heard about, timeline therapy, how the mind works and that kind of stuff. From then I was like in the work then, and I was like, what's next? And one thing led to another, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a crack. I'm going to start, helping men and doing that. And that started off with just doing one-on-ones. I had helped over 1,000 men one-on-one, but I got to a point where I was fucking burning myself out crazy. Like I was doing 50, 60 hours a week just in client sessions. And I had, then sales calls, all that kind of stuff on top of it. And I got to that point, and then, I hired a few coaches and went on the journey, went a lot deeper, and then one thing led to another, and here we are here. So it's kind of been a bit of a ride, bit of a journey.
Yeah.
But and it's not something that I just say because it sounds good, but I'm so grateful for all those things that my younger self went through, because I wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone through that.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, I can remember at school when I was in grade 5, I used to love fishing, and I did this talk and I had to tie the fishing line, but I was shaking so much that I couldn't tie the line. It was so traumatic for a year 5-year-old. And I couldn't really read and write, and now that's what I do for a living, And so it's like the void creates the value, the pit creates the transformation and the purpose, So it's like what you look back and you see all the dots line up, and I can see how all of those things happened to get me to here. And it's like I can't hold any negative emotions towards it, right? Because I can see how it's all helping and serving me.
Yeah, I mean you can, but you choose not to.
True.
For a modern day man, that darkness is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
So when a guy comes to us and his marriage is falling apart and his wife said, I don't love you anymore, or you're on the edge of the balcony about to end your own fucking life, or you're questioning whether or not you're good enough, or your kids don't see you as a role model, those are all opportunities to look into that darkness as a mirror and go, fuck, this breakdown, this darkness is an opportunity to create a breakthrough.
Yeah.
But how many men don't make that decision? How many men actually fucking just sit in that breakdown and let everything burn to the ground?
Yeah.
So a big thing that comes up for me, man, is you had the courage. You had the courage to actually do something about it and to actually change.
Yeah.
So let's dive into this idea of NLP first, because my journey is very similar in many ways, and NLP changed my life. And for anyone listening at home, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. And it's the ability to use your words and your language in your mind and externally to shape your reality. But can you dive into how NLP can help men in their relationships, in their purpose, in their balance, and all these key areas that you were struggling in? How does NLP work? Like, explain it for the layman listening right now.
Well, I kind of think NLP's like we're doing it anyway. It's like how we're programmed through language throughout the years. I believe our first 10 years are our most important to our development, and especially to our kids, as well. So I don't think we quite realize how much we influence our kids as a parent, as a father, more specifically. And so to me, NLP is like, you got to find out why we're doing the things that we're doing. And we do that by finding out the cause, universal law, cause and effect. You can't have a cause without the effect, and you can't have an effect without the cause.
Can you explain that for someone who doesn't understand what cause and effect means?
So it means like, if there's something going on in our life right now, that's the effect, and so people are trying to change the effect of that. It's like, I always use the example of, imagine if you are next to a river and there's people floating down the river, and you go out and you save one, and then you go out again and you save another one. You can spend your whole life burn yourself out doing that because you're just trying to deal with the effect, the symptom. But if you go up and find out who's throwing them in the river, that's the cause. And if you tackle the cause, the effect just disappears.
That makes sense. So like, if your relationship's breaking down, you're like, my relationship's breaking down, or I have no time. It's like, that's the after effect.
Yes.
But what's the cause? Do you have a limiting belief? Are you being a grumpy dad, etc.?
100%.
Okay, cool.
Because we don't create abundance in life, we create limitations.
Yeah.
So it's our job to let go of the limitations. Because like at our core, we are abundant. You look at a baby, it's like pure joy, there's no limitations. And so over time, we pick up all these limitations, and then we get to a point, and then we have to go, okay, what's going on in me to cause this? And that was the thing about learning this. And a lot of people think of NLP as just reframing, but that's very basic. I think we go a lot deeper into neuro-linguistic programming of how we're programmed through language and stuff as a kid, And we know communication's only 7% of the words, and then it's body language 56 or something percent, and then the tone that we use is 38. So we don't even have to be told anything as a kid, and we don't have our conscious mind. Well, we do, but it's, we're in such a young age that we make things mean certain things. And a lot of the things come from an unconscious programming. So how I use it all is like, right, what's going on in me to cause this? Because there's 4 planes: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And so the 3 create the physical. So the physical comes afterwards. And the external world shows us the problem, not the solution. Sorry, the solution, not the problem. So the marriage might be breaking down. That's not the problem. That's showing you the solution. And then we go, okay, what's going on in me to cause that? How it's not that situation. It's what we think and feel about it. And so then we go, cool, what's going on in me? And it's like, what caused this? And then so we go back and we try and find out what's happened, what patterns, what's the unconscious behaviors and stuff that's going on in me to cause this.
Yep.
And then you literally can change things so quickly. Like some of our events that we do, there's guys that have issues about money because, as a kid, if we grow up, most people's earliest memory of money is fear, worry, stress, scarcity, fights with parents and stuff. So we unconsciously link money with is being unsafe, right? So then why would we want to make something that's unsafe? So we might find creative ways to sabotage ourselves and in business, or spend money when we know we shouldn't, or put it on shit investments. So then we have to go back and we have to understand, where all that programming is, And so that's what I found is the biggest thing, is to go back in time and to find all those things. What's caused this? What's going on in me to create this? And as I was saying at the events, like some of the guys, one in particular, he'd been trying to sell this caravan for 6 months, and went back to this time he was holding guilt. He had guilt for holding on to money because his parents were giving it away and he didn't want to. It's like $5, he was 5 or something, and he literally let go of that. And then the same day, someone called him and paid him full for the caravan, and he hadn't had a hit for 6 months. And so this is the cause and effect, that it wasn't the caravan wasn't selling, it wasn't him not being able to make money or anything. There's an unconscious program that if I have money, I have to feel guilt. So why would he want to feel guilt? And so this is where the programming comes in through what I believe NLP is going back and finding like what's caused this,
Yeah.
So,
a lot of this programming destroys men. It really does. Like, you say a baby's full of joy and abundance. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
But then men come to you and they say things like, I'm depressed, or my marriage is falling apart, or I'm stressed in my business. I can't figure it out. I feel guilty. It's like, bro, how long have you been going through this for years, my whole life? Man, you didn't come out of the fucking vagina stressed, anxious, depressed, and fighting with your wife. There was some point throughout that journey as a child and into adulthood where you got corrupted, whether it's through limiting beliefs, your parents doing something, not doing something. And these patterns can fucking destroy you, right? They're so destructive. So you talk about these limitations that we have as men. We have mental, spiritual, emotional. How does this play out in relationships? How does this play out in terms of business and stress? Like, what are the most common symptoms you see with men that are breaking down their life, typically for a high performer? So not a guy who's not abundant, a guy who's grinding all the time. How does that play out?
Yeah, well, it's the same thing of coming back to like, why do we feel like we need to grind to do things? I always look at Richard Branson. He's got 400 companies and he spends the most time with his family, and there's that book, Think and Grow Rich. It doesn't say hustle and grind and grow rich. It's like Think and Grow Rich. I think it comes back so much to our mindset. If we think we're going to have to work hard, we're going to have to, But also too, there's a lot of people that don't feel good enough, like at their core. Like they may go, yeah, I feel good enough, I feel like I deserve things, but it's coming from a lack-based program, and so that's the unconscious program that causes us so much to suffering, I suppose, and we feel like we have to hustle and grind because we have these voids when we're younger, and then that creates the value. And I think it's really important to find out, like, why do we do these things? And that's one thing. I've got a 2-year-old nephew, and I learned so much from him. And I was down there, he lives in Melbourne, and I was getting up early going to the gym, and he runs in and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, going to the gym. He's like, why? I said, oh, because I feel good, this and that. He's like, why? And he kept every answer, he kept asking me why. Yeah. I reflected then, because I was like, most parents would go, stop asking me why. But I was like, why do I? And I kind of like took it on, like, why do I do? And then I got real down to the core, and I'm like, why do I actually do this? And then something was like, well, why do I do everything else that I do? Yeah. And if we get down, most of it comes from a lack. And so if we put out lack, we get lack back, right? And so if we have to hustle and grind, or if we think that we're not good enough, in a relationship, or we see our parents' relationship, something like that, and it comes from a lack base, then we might think that we're putting out what we want, but it's actually coming from a place of lack. You know?
It's scarcity, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think when it comes to relationships, it's like we generally, that saying, "You complete me, you make me whole." You know, I don't think necessarily that you should have two wholes come together, but it's kind of true. Like if you have one person that's rejects something inside of themselves, they're going to attract a partner that expresses that, because that's the law of polarity, the balance of the universe.
Yeah.
So I think if we just understand that we're going to generally attract a polar opposite, and our business will be a reflection of that too, that then the more that we bring that balance up, we're not going to attract someone who's at the complete opposite. And I think if we have a very severe lack of self-worth and we don't value ourselves, then we're going to attract someone who might be quote unquote narcissistic. Yeah. Whatever the fuck that means. Gets thrown around a lot. It's a
label. We label a lot of things these days. Yeah.
And so we're going to find like that, because that's exactly the polar opposite. So the more that we bring that down and feel better within ourselves, we're going to meet someone at that same level, Yeah.
So let's say you're like married and you're working hard to provide for your family, and you bring some awareness to the fact that the reason you grind all the time and the reason you struggle to switch off and the reason that you're stressed out comes from your beliefs. It comes from your language, comes from your patterns in childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have guys who are in a relationship and they are blaming their partner, and it is lack. There is a lack of sex. There's a lack of respect. There's a lack of appreciation. How many times have you heard from a guy, "I work my fucking ass off. I come home, the house is a mess. She's upset at me," right? Like it's exhausting for a guy. Then you feel this lack of respect. So I think in most relationships, men and women are lacking. They're lacking love, appreciation, support, respect. How do you as a man stop blaming and go, what has caused this within me? Because there's a mental, emotional, spiritual, right? How do you take that ownership and responsibility and stop fucking blaming?
Yeah. I think it's just radical responsibility. Hey,
yeah.
Have you heard of Ho'oponopono?
No, never.
So it's like an ancient Hawaiian technique, and it's like forgiveness technique, but he talks about, because we create our reality, right? So if we've created someone with a problem, then we've created that person with their problem because they're in our reality. So it's like taking it's taking responsibility for everything. I was like, well, that's such a cool concept. So, we might have people that come to our programs and it's like, well, we've attracted them with their problems. So that's our problem now, know? And so it's like, wow. So we do the same in a relationship. It's like, okay, cool. Like we've got to take responsibility, because if you're blaming someone else, I wouldn't say you're a victim, but you're playing the role of a victim, and you're powerless, right? So the first thing is taking full responsibility. And this is where I think a lot of people and men go, I'm not taking responsibility for her. She's got to take responsibility. And I'm like, well, maybe, but you can't make anyone do anything. You can only take full responsibility of yourself, And so I think if we blame someone for not having sex or for not cleaning the house and doing all these things, I always think it's like, firstly, would you want to have sex with yourself? Man, I used to work in construction, and the boys would whinge about that all the time. I'm like, fucking look at you. Like, you're 20 kilos, 30 kilos overweight. It's like, I don't blame her, So I think that's look after yourself, make yourself attractive.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing. And I think the second time is to come back and say, well, everyone's kind of doing the best they can with the resources they have. And I think the communication piece is key too. So we got to take responsibility. First, we got to, if it's a lack of sex or something like that, it's like, right, make yourself more attractive. Go to the gym, put yourself on a diet, clean yourself up, whatever you need to do, Then communication is key. And I think that's where a lot of men, more specifically, they fall down as well, because they just don't know how to. And then they might say something, or it triggers them, and then it's anger that comes out, but normally it's from a place of hurt or something like that. So we really need to be able to voice what we want to say. And so there's a really good book called Relationship Skills Workbook, and so it's like heaps of things in there. And so one of the best things to do is like, how if a man goes to his partner, say this is what's happening, and says, well, what do you want, like what's going on in you, like how does that make you feel, like what's going on, how does tell me what's going on in your body. Like, do you feel this? Are you angry? Are you scared? Are you worried? You know, and then you're saying, well, what do you want for us? What do you want for me? You know, and so then in that sense, it's like, wow, you know, that they actually feel heard, and I'm sure they're going to do more things for that.
Yeah,
you know, they're going to do more things for their partner if they feel heard, because everyone wants to feel heard, everyone wants to feel loved, you know.
Yeah, seek to understand before seeking to be understood.
Exactly.
How often do we listen to our partner only to have a preloaded response and try and win that argument and prove them wrong and ourselves right, instead of just shutting the fuck up, looking your partner in the eyes when she's nagging you or upset at you and going, what's true about what she's saying? What's my role in this?
Yeah.
That takes so much fucking courage, and most men are too weak and afraid to do it.
100%.
They don't have the balls.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things too is like masculine trait is fixing, doing,
Yeah.
you know, getting shit done. Where feminine is the complete opposite. So men come in and they're like, my relationship isn't good. I need to fix it. Or, you know, she's asking for something, but I need to fix it. What can I do for you? And she's sitting there going, I just want you to listen. And then she's talking to her friend saying, he won't listen to me.
Yeah.
And then so then we think, I can't communicate. She's not listening to me. I have communication issues. But one of the biggest things is, does she want support or answers?
Yeah.
And if you ask that question, it's like, most of the time she just wants support. She just wants to be held, to listen.
Yeah.
She might be asking for things, but she just wants you to be there, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing, just to be in the presence. And words is powerful. No words is powerful. Silence, you know, in communication.
Yeah.
Sometimes just being there and just looking deeply into their eyes, it's the best thing, you know, just listening to them. So
and again, it's something we're not taught how to do as men. So we fix things in business. Somebody's not performing, you have a conversation with them, you even fire them at some point. But in our relationships, we tend to do this thing where we sweep shit under the rug and we get upset at our partner because the house is a mess or because she hasn't met one of our needs. We don't take any ownership of what needs we're not meeting for them.
Yeah.
And then instead of communicating it calmly and patiently, what do? We let it build up and then it explodes like a volcano. That trigger turns to frustration, irritation, rage, and then we fucking explode. And then we feel guilt and shame afterwards and go, I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
And it happens again, right? So you said a lot here that I want to unpack. Being a victim versus playing the role.
Yeah.
That was a really powerful frame. Because just like we talked about with narcissism, and we had a little chuckle about the label, we tend to do this thing in our relationships and with ourselves where we label. I have ADHD. You're being a bitch. You're being a victim. You're never around. Like we label these things. Whereas this idea of playing the role, I really like that. It's like you're not a bad person. You're not a victim. You're not a cunt. You're not a shit dad. You're not a shit husband, but you're playing the role of one. So you can decide to play a different role. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because, you know, most people at the core, they're not victims.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what I always come back to. It's like everyone at their core, their abundance, their joy, their happiness. Like you think about a baby, unless it needs to shit or nappy changed or it's hungry, it's always happy, right? It's laughing. So our natural state is happiness, is joy, is confidence, is everything.
Yeah.
So that's as I said, that's who we are at our core.
Yeah.
You know? So coming back to, I forget what you said now.
Just really quickly, if you're getting value from this podcast episode, I'd appreciate a massive favor. If you're watching on YouTube, give this a thumbs up, or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform, give this 5 stars. It helps us reach more men, keep more families together, and get better guests onto the show. So if you're getting value, all that I ask is you take 5 seconds to give it a thumbs up or 5 stars so we can help more people and keep delivering you epic value.
Well, I think the point I was trying to get at was that it's identities and like we put these labels on ourselves. Whereas if you're currently not happy, joyful, positive, excited, confident, all the things a man should be powerful, happy, positive, a leader. If you're not that, that means you're playing the role of someone who's not that. But it's not who you are. Like how many times did dudes say, I've got depression, I've got anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not fucking cancer, bro. Right? Like it's a state. You don't walk around when you're happy and go, fuck, I caught happiness. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same with these negative emotions. And I think what really stuck out to me about what you've shared so far is this idea of playing the role. So for any listener right now, if you're currently not where you want to be in your health, wealth, relationships, what role are you playing? What's your cause? What are you doing to cause that?
Yeah.
I also want to talk about this idea of wanting to have sex with yourself. What a powerful frame. My wife's not fucking me enough. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't appreciate me. Well, brother, look in the mirror. Do you respect yourself? Yeah, I make lots of money. I do. Do you really respect yourself? You're so fat you can't see your penis anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think that's a really powerful frame. And at least this idea of entitlement. As men, we seem to believe that making money means we're entitled to certain gifts and presents, such as sex, respect, appreciation. And besides the sex, I hope that doesn't happen in the business, but besides the sex, we get a lot of that from our team, right? Like, you've got a team, I got a team. They appreciate us, they respect us, we're in charge, we're in control. Then we come home and that leadership and control disappears. So what do you think is the biggest problem for men in relationships? We've talked about communication, we've talked about sex. What's stopping men from taking that responsibility on how to fix their marriage and have a better business in life? What's stopping them?
I think it's fear, to be honest.
Yeah.
Fear of loss, fear of losing what they've got. But also there's a lot of fear when it comes to having to start again or having to meet someone else, or the fear of being alone, or those types of things. So I think fear is the biggest thing. It's like, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to push that far. I don't want to drive them away. I think this is another thing to it, is like the system isn't very good for men if you're going through divorces and all that kind of stuff. So I think that kind of plays into it a little bit as well. But I think that the fear of that too is a big thing. And I think that a lot of men, it's just a society that we live in at the moment, that a lot of females get put on the pedestal, and so we really need to bring them down and understand that they've got just as many drawbacks and downsides as we do, and we see them for how they are rather than, a skewed perception of them and what we project onto them. And so if we see them for how they are and don't think that they're going to leave, because what we hold in mind tends to manifest, it's one of the laws of consciousness. So if we're holding fear in our mind that she's going to leave, we then might create that for ourselves, So I think it's really important to understand that, it's all going to be okay. That's the biggest thing, everything's going to be okay. And then when it comes to the fear around that, just go, well, it's under your control.
So when you say fear, do you mean fear of addressing the core issues in the relationships?
Yeah, because then it will lead to potentially something else. So it's, as you said, sweep it on the carpet, stick your head in the sand. It's easier to do that,
Yeah.
I always say we do the hard things in life, our life will be easy. But if we do the easy things in life, our life will be hard. Pushing shit under the carpet is easy, creating a hard life.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'll just, push it under the carpet. I won't do it because it may be fearful. It may, lead to conflict, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we see it all the time. You probably see it too. It's like men will go, I need to do something. I'll just put it off. I'll need to do something. And then she leaves and then they're like, fuck, I got to do something now. And it's like, man, you should have done something when you should have. So don't wait till then.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's like people just go, we'll push it under the surface. It will kind of go away.
Yeah. It's so common for a man to say, my wife left me overnight. And then that blame game kicks in. She's giving up on the marriage, 20 years together, the kids, we've got the house, the car. What more does she want? And it's like, brother, of those 20 years, 18, you were a fucking dickhead. Now, it's not that she's blameless. She has a massive role to play. But like, if you are the best man you can be, your wife doesn't leave. I don't know how much of my story you know, but the reason I started Empowered Man 8 years ago, my partner came home, sat down, looked me in the eyes and said, Tony, I don't love you anymore. And it fucking destroyed me. I was about to propose to her. I wanted to have kids. I had my whole life mapped out. So I went on a 3-month bender, ending in suicidality, didn't sleep for days at a time. And what I realized from that moment was I blamed her for a lot of shit. You didn't tell me anything. You didn't warn me. But 6 months prior to her saying those words, she sat down one day at lunch and said, I don't think we're going to work out. And my response to that was, don't say things like that. And it just went under the rug. So the warning signs were there. The reason I share that story is you mentioned upsetting your partner when you have a difficult conversation. Whether you have a conversation about it or not, if she perceives you as lazy, fat, not the man she fell in love with, a poor communicator, works too much, whether you have the conversation or not, does it still exist for them? Yes or no?
I would say yes.
Exactly. So it already exists. And I think men don't understand this. It's like, if you sweep under the rug, it doesn't mean it's not real.
No.
It's like having a massive tumor in your lungs and it's sticking out of your chest and you're like, nah, I can't see it. Like it's going to fucking kill you. So let's say a man is in fear. He knows that it exists. He knows the partner's unhappy. He knows he's unhappy and he just doesn't address it. And he's listening to this right now. How do you fucking face that fear and do the hard shit that you know you need to do? And this applies to business in every area, but specifically relationships.
Yeah. I think it always comes back to push yourself, like going to the gym and pushing yourself first. Because if you've got relationship not going so well, do hard shit. And one of the best things is physical. Push yourself into a challenge and then you'll get used to doing hard things and pushing yourself into that.
Let's say you're already working out,
Yep.
fucking shredded, but your relationship's a piece of shit. You got a great business, great body, but your marriage is a fucking hellhole.
Yeah.
How do you take that action? Because they're successful in those areas, but they don't fucking do it in their marriage.
Yeah. One of the biggest things is courage is, if the Hawkin Scale of consciousness, if you don't know what it is, it kind of helps you go up the scale. And courage is where the critical line comes when you get to, courage to do things.
Okay.
And we have all of these different emotions down the bottom. And so one of the best things to get is to go from, maybe there's fear, right? But above that is anger. And then above that is pride. And then you've got courage. So move yourself up that scale. If you're feeling fearful, being like, well, how can I get angry about this situation? Because that's giving you more energy. It's pushing you up the scale. Right, then how can I feel pride about this? And then you go, I'm better than this. I can talk to her. We get those things. And then we push up to courage. And then we have the courage to do it. Because even if we're depressed or down about the situation, maybe not, depressed, but we feel down about the situation, maybe feeling guilt and shame. Again, anger is higher than that. So it's like, how can I feel angry about this situation? What can I do to feel anger? Give us more energy. Then we're much more motivated to do things if you're angry than you are down or feeling guilty or shameful,
That's powerful.
Then you come up to pride. I'm better than this, whether it's good or bad, who cares? It's still just pushing you up.
Yeah.
And then you get to that point of courage. It's like, I can do this now. And then you go out and do it. So I think that's one of the biggest things is to just, if you understand the scale and the different energy that's involved, you keep going up the scale till you get to that point of courage.
That's so powerful. So it's called the Hawkin Scale.
Yeah, Dr. Hawkin Scale of consciousness.
Amazing. So we've got shame and guilt down the bottom. So
Yep.
I'm ashamed. I yelled at my kids again. I'm working too much. I'm hiding my alcohol or drug abuse, whatever it may be. You then turn that into fear. It's like, fuck, if I don't change this, I'm going to lose my family.
Yep.
Like create the pain that you know is going to happen, bring it into the present.
Yep.
That's a motivator, gun to the head, right?
Yeah. Pain is powerful motivator.
Pain is so powerful. Like I watched a man die in front of me, and the reason I work so fucking hard is because I could die any moment. I want to provide for my family, but it's also why I take time off now. So that fear is really powerful.
Yeah.
And then turn it into anger. Like, fucking, what am I doing with myself? Like, I've put on 20 kilos. What the fuck, Tony? Like, get your shit together.
Yeah.
And then pride. It's like, you know what? I can do this shit because I'm the fucking man. I don't even believe I'm the man yet, but I'm becoming the man. And then you have the courage to take action.
Yeah.
And I think what really stands out here is as a man, like nothing changes until you change. So if your body needs to change, fucking take action. If your relationship isn't good, take action. If your business needs to make money, take action. It is virtually impossible not to grow and expand as a man if you're taking consistent action. It's virtually impossible, right? So courage is required to take action, and you got to go, where am I on these sort of scales? That's so fucking powerful, man.
Yeah.
On that critical line on having courage, let's say you have the courage, you start taking action. You're going to the gym, you're having difficult conversations, you're remodeling your business or career to give you freedom. That's financial freedom and relationship freedom. But when we spoke earlier, before we started filming, you mentioned mental, emotional freedom. So talk to me about how that's impacting men's businesses, their health, and their relationships.
Yeah. So if we're not mentally and emotionally free, then we've got so much shit going on inside of our mind, which then, for example, we might be feeling angry. I always use the example of like a red light. A red light's just a red light. But if we're rushed, it's like fucking red light and it's the worst thing ever. But if we're having a Sunday drive, it's just like we're driving and we stop and whatever.
Didn't even notice it.
The red light doesn't change. It's our state. So if we're not free internally, mentally and emotionally, we're projecting that onto the world. There's 3 ways that we handle emotions and feelings as humans, unless this is untrained, not know how to do it. The first is suppression or repression. And so we suppress things. And if we suppress it, it has to go somewhere. It either gets expressed. I'm not a doctor, I don't play one, on the internet or anywhere, but it will get expressed through the body as dis-ease or dysfunction, or it gets projected onto someone else. So this is why we may feel anger or rage or something at ourselves, because all anger is self and all frustration is self. It comes from an unrealistic expectation. So we're experiencing those things, which generally a lot of men, it's more socially acceptable to be angry than it is sad, through the years.
Don't cry, stop being a pussy.
Exactly.
But you lose your shit and you're a man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that gets projected onto other people, and then we see in business and in family. Unfortunately, family is normally the one who cop it the most,
Yeah.
So we project that anger onto them, and then it doesn't matter what they do, we're going to see it through the lenses of anger, and so then we'll take it out on them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're mentally and emotionally free, you're just at peace all the time. I honestly believe if you're at peace, you're a success, mentally and emotionally, and that comes from not just anger. It's all sorts of things. To the person that's holding a lot of guilt, they're going to see all these situations that create all of these guilt feelings for them, or things, sin, that they might go, oh, that will make me feel guilt, or that will make me feel that. To the fearful person, they'll look around and they'll see fear everywhere. The angry person, they'll see that everywhere. So if we're not mentally and emotionally free, we're going to be projecting that shit onto the world around us.
Mm.
And then we're seeing that. And that's why I say the external world is the solution, not the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's showing us,
Okay, so just to clarify what I've heard you say. So when a man is not emotionally or mentally free, one of three things happens. One, he suppresses. So what he does is he holds that emotion in, and it gets stuck inside of the body. Emotion is energy in motion. If it's not processed, it's stuck. Then what happens is that emotion is either expressed by disease through the body. It's traveling around the body and fucking destroying you. Stress, heart attack, cancer.
Or talking or coming through the mouth.
Or it comes out the mouth, right? And then it's projection. We project it at our loved ones. And we've all done this. I've done it. When you yell at someone you care about, you've had a long, stressful day, and you don't know how to process that shit, and it comes out and it burns the people you love. There's a fourth one here that I've observed as well, which is sedation. Like, I used to drink every single day. Midday, I'd have a whiskey in my hand. One turned into two turned into four. I'd smoke weed every day. I would numb myself because I did not know how to deal with my emotions. And it was only when I learned how to process my emotions that my business really got better and created freedom, that my relationship got better. But my relationship freedom and business freedom came from mental and emotional freedom. So how does somebody who is struggling with suppression, expression, projection, or sedation, they're a hardworking father, they've got a great family, but they don't know how to manage their emotions, and it's fucking destroying them and their business and their relationships. How does somebody start working on that and shift it for good?
I think the first step is spend time with yourself, by yourself. We're normally doing so much for everyone else. It's like, how can you know who you are if you don't spend time with yourself? Once a year, I do Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation. You're just meditating 10 hours a day, 10 days straight. Can't talk to anyone. You pretty much just eat, sleep, and meditate. Man, it's the most liberating and peaceful experience I've ever I do it every year. It just cleans so much out. Now, you don't have to go to that extent, but a lot of people that to be on their own or be by themselves, it's scary. It's fearful. It's like, what will I think about? Where will I go? Because there's so much going on mentally for us. I think the first thing is to be comfortable with being by yourself and doing things without anyone else around, because then that brings things up for us. Second is fasting. Fasting is, it will show you so much. If you're not eating, it will bring up all these different emotions. We have to feel them to heal them, right? If we don't know what they are, how do we heal them? So we need to kind of bring these up to the surface to understand what they are first. Whereas if we're constantly hustling and grinding, a lot of men do, they dive into work. I used to do that all the time when I was in construction. We'd do six days a week, and I was running the job so I could pick the hours, and we were doing 6 days a week and 12 hours a day. Well, I was. But what I was running away from, I felt lonely. I felt not good enough. I was like trying to escape and not understand what was going on in my life. And so I was diving into work to do that, which I think is very common too. But we can't work through something if we don't even know what it is. Like, if you don't know, you don't know, right? And so I think we need to understand and sit with ourselves and bring those emotions to the surface to actually feel them, to understand them, to start with.
Of course. I think a lot of guys struggle with that. Like you and I both coach men and some successful men. And I can already hear the excuses of most listeners. It's like, wait a minute, you're telling me I fucking need I know you said you don't need to do this, but I need to sit down for 10 days and meditate for 10 hours. Like, fuck that. I got a job to do. Or, you know, being on my own, and I've got kids, man. I've got fucking sports on the weekends. I've got a business to run. Like, how the fuck am I going to create the time? And I get it. Like, I'm a business owner. You're a business owner. I've got my second kid on the way. I've got a very, you know, busy lifestyle. But I think what we forget is these excuses of I'm busy and I have no time. If you don't make the time to sort your shit out, you're going to be forced to sort your shit out.
Yeah.
You know, when your wife leaves and you're going through a 2.5-year divorce and you lose half your assets, that's a lot more time than fixing it, right? So this all ties back to like this idea of healing yourself and success. You said something earlier, when you're at peace, you're in success. Most men don't know how to create peace. I've struggled with it for a while.
Yeah.
So let's say, fuck it, I'm going to be on my own. I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to heal myself. And you sit there and you start to feel fucking uncomfortable. You pull your phone out, start scrolling. Like it's impossible for most men currently for them to actually have the capacity to do that. How do you learn how to be comfortable being on your own? How to be comfortable being at peace when you've got a fucking chaos in the business, a marriage that's falling apart, fucking unhealthy, no time? Like, how the fuck do you even do that?
If you're getting value from this podcast episode and you want to learn how you can have a better relationship, a better marriage, you can be a better father, husband, the man you know your family deserves, then it's very fucking hard to do that just by listening and getting fed information. Sure, this is valuable, but what's much more valuable is having a custom roadmap and a custom plan. And that's exactly what we do here at The Empowered Man. So if you want to learn how to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, and find work-life balance, then that's exactly what we want to help you with. We'll help you make more money, working less hours, have that life you deserve by becoming unfuckwithable. Just tap the link down below in the description and go and book a coaching session with my Empowered Man team. On that session, we'll build your custom Empowered Man roadmap to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, find work-life balance, and have the life you deserve. Click the link down below right now.
I think it comes from always doing the work. Like, I think a lot of businesses fail is because they can only grow to the level of the business owner. They want to have a business here, but they're not doing the work themselves. So I think we have to live and breathe doing the work.
What do you mean by doing the work?
So by, you know, doing the daily things that we do, but doing breath work, diving in and finding the unconscious programs, doing the different events. Like, I think, you know, DeMartini's here all the time, you know, Tony Robbins, like, who knows, but as what people get out of them, but at least do that and continue personal development. I think, you know, if we're not growing, we're dying. There's always two states. So that's the first thing, and to learn tools of how to do it. And so just quickly, if anyone's listening, there's a few tools that you can use in the moment is tapping. You know, there's a few different ones, but thought field therapy is one. So like when we're feeling that, we tap the meridian points and it literally blows out that negative energy.
What do you mean by that?
So it's like the meridian points, the acupuncture points on our body.
Yeah. Do you have a technique you can show us?
So yeah, there's like tapping here that you can do.
Yeah.
So this one's related for like stress and anxiety. There's points there.
Yeah.
There's points on like here.
Is that why when
there.
we're stressed, we go like this? We sort of...
I think unconsciously we know this.
Our hands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's psychological reversal as well. So you could literally just be feeling something and just tapping this away.
Yeah.
And the best time is when you're feeling. So that's something that I'll do all the time. Like if I literally put myself in situations that bring up emotions, or that, you know, I dive into those, I chase those things, because I know if I get into them and it brings something out that's not pleasurable, it gives me another chance to work through it. If I get triggered, I'm like, yes, I've got something else to work through.
Yeah.
So I'm actively looking for them because I have the tools to deal with it too. So that's one, in the moment, tapping. But then also there's another one of, you know, you just understand what's going on and you can find out, okay, what's going on in me that caused this? What part of me is getting triggered by this? And it all comes back to know thyself. The more you know yourself, the more you can be yourself, the more you can love yourself. It's really hard. If you don't fully love yourself, it's really hard to expect someone else to. You know, it's quite naive to think that too. So the more the work we do on ourselves, the more we bring, if we put it in a kind of like a process, step by step, which, you know, I think satisfies our logical mind. First, we put ourselves in situations that bring up shit so we get to work through it. It's the complete opposite. It's like, oh no, I don't want to feel that, so I'm going to move away from it. But we actually do it the opposite. We dive into it. It's okay,
Do the hard shit.
let me put myself into this situation. So we bring those emotions up. We ask ourselves, what's going on in me to cause this? Why am I getting triggered by that? Like, what am I feeling in my body? Then we can use tapping, we can use breath work, we can use, going back in time and healing, releasing the core wounds of those things.
Yeah.
You can write down the benefits. Like one thing that happened, I mentioned before, a sales agency quit on me, cost me a lot of money. And my first reaction was not great. But I sat down, I wrote, how is this helping? What's the good that's going to come from this? And I wrote a list of page and a half, like A4 book, page and a half. And instantly I was like, this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing ever. Like, and literally I'm like so happy that happened now.
Yeah.
And so those things too is finding the good in it. It's like universal law. I kind of touched on it before. It's like law of polarity. There can't be good without bad. You wouldn't know what bad is without good. You wouldn't know what good is without bad.
Yeah.
So everything has good and bad. And so simply just writing down, like, by my partner doing this, how is that helping me? By my kids doing this, by my kids pissing me off all the time, or, my business not going so well. How is that helping me? How is that serving me? And then you bring it to that level of peace, because if we have an imbalanced perception of more positives than negatives, I mean, that's not necessarily bad, but if it's the opposite, where it's more negatives and more positives, we need to bring it out so it's level, and then it hits that point of neutrality, and that's where peace is,
Yeah. And that's a really good frame of peace, because a lot of successful guys are lacking it. Like you come home after a long day, no matter how powered up you were in the morning, you're dealing with shit all day. You're trying to deal with the triggers. You come home, the house is a mess. Your wife's fucking at your throat again. You don't feel appreciated or respected. And then you finally get to bed after helping with the kids after a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
And you're laying in bed and your mind's just fucking ticking, tick, 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 thinking about all the shit to do. So peace is something that a lot of men are lacking. It's something I struggle with up until very recently. I also want to jump back into this idea of, how to create that peace. So make the time for yourself, do those daily habits, get rid of blockages, come to events. But again, guys are going to say, I don't have the time for that. But this is the funny thing, right? We make time to take our kids to school or sports. We make time to go to meetings. We make time for all these other things. And for some weird reason, men just don't upgrade themselves. They upgrade their phones, their cars, their tools, but God forbid you put 2, 5, 10 grand into yourself.
Yeah.
And the cost of not doing that is so fucking high.
Yeah.
Now, I want to make something clear as well. Everything you're sharing works, but it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
Right? You don't just fucking do hard conversations and your relationship's fixed. You don't just start going to the gym and you got a 6-pack. You don't just start creating peace in your business and you have freedom. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 8 weeks, sometimes it's 8 years, but it takes as long as it needs to, right? It takes as long as it needs to. And if you're a guy currently listening to this and you want a better relationship, you want more intimacy and sex, you want a business that gives you freedom, you want to be happy internally and have peace, you got to work for it and be willing to do whatever it takes to get it. That's commitment. Let's talk about triggers and lessons. So a lot of men react to stupid shit. Like fundamentally, let's say you come home, there's dishes in the sink. Why is that a problem? Because you have an expectation they should be done. But in reality, you're living in a first world country with a dishwasher. You've got a roof over, like life's fucking amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's all our perception.
Yeah.
And then what happens is these triggers and reactions create a chain reaction. So like dishes in the sink, my wife doesn't care, I feel angry, I yell. So thoughts create feelings, create actions, create reactions. What are some techniques you have for a guy who is getting triggered and reacting in his business or in his relationships on how that man can stop reacting and start taking ownership and shift the fucking pattern?
Yeah.
Because that destroys so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think firstly asking like, what's the real issue here?
Yeah.
Because it's, as you said, it's a fucking dishes in the sink,
Yeah,
it's
or
nothing.
a team member not doing their job properly. It's just minor shit that can be fixed, right?
Yeah.
But we blow it up.
Yeah.
And we just sit in it for hours at a time. Like that thing that happened this morning, I'm angry about it tonight.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah. And I think it's not that one thing, it's a combination of things. It's like a build up. And so firstly is when we sit back for a second, even if it's like 2 minutes, and just go, okay, that was the situation that happened. What was the trigger for that? Like, what's really going on? What's underneath the surface? Like, is it that, and it could feel like they don't feel loved at home. And then so every little thing that they do, they're seeing it through that lens that pisses them off because they don't feel loved or they don't feel respected or something, And so it's the same in business. So I honestly think self-inquiry, self-reflection is the first thing. Know thyself, as I said before. Like, we got to understand, like, why do we do that in the first place? And that's a really powerful question too, is to go, okay, I reacted to the dishes in the sink. Let's continue with that. So the dishes are in the sink. Why did I react to that? And then you go, whatever the answer might be, it could be like, well, I always come home and I'm always providing, and, I come home and the dishes can't be in the sink. Okay, so why? Why does that annoy you? And you keep going down the whys, and then you'll get to the deeper reason. And then you'll go, okay, cool. So like, that's the issue. That's just showing me that there's the issue up here, that the dishes in the sink.
Yeah.
And we go a little bit deeper, and it can take, while you're driving to work or driving anywhere, and then you just find that deeper why, and that's the issue that you work through, and then this will just all disappear.
Yeah, because the dishes don't matter. It's if you really go deep, like, why am I upset? Because I have a story that she should have done it. Why should she have done it? Because I've been working all day and she's got her job, but why does she need to do it? Because it's not fair. But why?
Yeah.
Because I don't feel appreciated. It's like when your partner tells you to put the toilet seat down. She doesn't give a fuck about the toilet seat. She gives a fuck about the fact that she feels like you don't support her and appreciate her because the toilet seat's up. Does that make sense? So it's a lot of guys don't realize this. And I think self-reflection is such a powerful tool. I don't look at anything in my life as negative anymore. I look at every challenge. There's no problems, just challenges. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn and grow. Mm-hmm. So when your sales agency promises you the world and fucks you over, I've been there, right? It's like, I'm triggered, I'm angry, this is not fair. Those are rational and normal thoughts. Like, I don't think we're saying here you don't get upset or triggered. When your partner says something rude, you get triggered. When your team don't perform, you get triggered. But it's how do you navigate it after the trigger? Like, if that trigger lasts 30 seconds and then you learn and grow from it, not a problem. But it's when we hold on to this shit so deeply that it is a problem. Why do you think men and women hold so deeply onto these things that are fucking destroying them? Like these stories, my wife doesn't care, my team don't perform, I'm not good enough, I don't have time. Like, we hold on to these beliefs like they're fucking gold.
Yeah.
Why do we do that?
I think because our unconscious mind seeks things that are familiar.
Yeah.
And that's familiar, and we're essentially addicted to those feelings.
Yeah.
So it's like we have this big negative cloud that gets all of the energy. And so something might happen, and I call it the piss pool. It's like it's nice and warm in there. Everyone's doing the same thing. And so it's like that, it's nice and warm in there, and everyone kind of brings us back. But then that is there where we push things onto everyone else. And it's easier for us to feel negative than it is to feel positive in those situations. It's easier for us to go, this is what's going on, this is what's wrong. You can ask people, even we say like, how's your day? And people go, not bad. Already, how far is it? It's not far. So we're already programmed to be negative. We hear no and what we can't do on average 147,000 times by the time we're 18. I don't know how they got that stat, but that's how they got it. Yeah. So we're programmed to be negative. We're programmed to look for that. And so that's why we get addicted to those feelings, because that's what we know. And so then we need to retrain ourselves. I think this is the big thing. It's like we need to go to the gym for our mind as well and train ourselves to think more positive. And by doing that, like what you say as well, is, everything's good. I just get to choose what I want to see it. And it's not going to happen overnight, but the more that you do it, the more naturally it's just going to become an unconscious behavior of going, okay, this is happening, but what's the good that's going to come from this? And it will just happen over time. Then we don't fall into that. So I think it may take, for someone just starting out, it may take an hour or two after it happens for them to go, oh shit, I need to see this a different way now. But the more that we do it, the more we train ourselves to do it, and it'll come just naturally to us as well.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I wouldn't say that everything is good. I don't know if I misspoke there, but everything, it's very global language. Most things are positive.
Yeah.
So like, if my wife pulls me up on something that's triggering, let's say my wife says to me, you were a dick just before, I'm going to get triggered because of how she delivered it. I can't control how she delivers it. So I now have a choice on how I react. And I can be like, fuck you, bitch. I would never say that to my wife, but I could, right? Yeah. We're all capable of it. Or I can take a breath and just slow down and go, okay, thank you for sharing that feedback with me. What specifically did I do? Oh, you did this and this and this. Well, I wasn't aware of that, but thank you for bringing it to my attention. Now it's a positive interaction because she's holding me to account.
Yeah.
I can also then say to her afterwards, I'd appreciate it next time you give feedback if you're a bit more like kind and you didn't call me names or say I'm a dickhead, right? Yeah. But then that's a positive interaction. If I have to fire a team member, I can look at it from the lens of, this guy was a dick, I wasted my time, I wasted money, or go, cool, I made a bunch of mistakes here. What can I take ownership for? Cause that created this effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny, you know this very well. When you think and believe these things, everything helps you grow, and you skyrocket past the competition. You skyrocket past everyone else.
Yeah.
So I think for the listeners, a really powerful thing to do right now, based on your piss pool analogy, I love that, is get a pen and paper out and write down piss pool up the top. And what are all the areas in your life you're comfortable in?
Yeah.
Like in your health, where are you fucking comfortable sitting in a warm, steaming pile of piss?
Yeah.
Right?
It's so good, hey?
It's so fucking good.
I actually
I've never
got
heard
that from
before.
Kerwin Ray.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Kerwin, as well. That
Yes.
was a very sad moment. But got health, wealth, relationships. Where are you sitting in comfort? And as a man, as we head into the end of 2025 and 2026, like ask yourself, am I willing to tolerate comfort and average? And if the answer is yes, fucking great. Good for you, bro. If you want to have an average relationship, an average business, an average bank balance, an average mind, an average body, good for you, man. But I don't know about you. I don't want to be average. I want to be fucking exceptional. I want to be the best at development, advanced. I want to be the best. So what is the piss pool in your lives? Now, we've covered a lot today: relationships, mental freedom, emotional freedom. In terms of stress and overwhelm, how can a man reduce stress and overwhelm to create time for relationships, health, and mindset? Like, how do you do that?
Going back a little bit on the time thing, you know, when we talk about I don't have the time, it's not time management, because we all have the same. It's priority management, you know. And so I think whenever someone says they don't have time to do this, I'm like, you do, you're just not prioritizing it. You know, people find time for things that are important to them. It's just not important enough. So when it comes to stress and overwhelm, what I found with overwhelm and procrastination, it comes from a couple of things. One, it's not important enough to us. If I took your girls, for example, and I was like, you're never going to see them again unless you do this, and this by the end of, you know, in 30 days, I'm sure you'd fucking do it. You'd go, you know, it's important enough for you.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. If it's important enough to us, we'll do it. And if we don't know why we're doing it, why would we want to do it? You know? So the first thing is you can make a big list of like, why is this important to me? Then you'll just start doing it. When I wrote my first book, I wrote 500 reasons of how this book is going to help me. And I got to about 400 and I was like, fuck, I just want to write it already. But I wrote it 500, and then every second that, you know, in between sessions and stuff, I was like, it was on my mind because I could see how important it was for me. So then there's no procrastination. That's the first thing. Then that obviously leads to overwhelm as well, and stress and all of this. The second thing with overwhelm is it's confused. So we don't exactly know. For example, if you go to the shops and you have like 10 things to get, if you go, I've got to get this, 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 and this, just saying that's only 10 things, but that's like, fuck, that's so much. But if you have a list of like, oh, there's only 10 things, you walk around and you just get those 10 things. There's no overwhelm, no stress. So I think the biggest thing is we got to get shit from out of here down here, because our mind can't mess with it when it's down, when it's out of our head. So one of the best things, and Dan Martell, I heard this every evening, he goes, okay, what's the open tabs? What's the open loops? What have I still got to do? And he just gets them out of his head. So he writes them all down. So then they're on the paper, you know, and then we know we can deal with them tomorrow. We can get them out. And so I think the biggest thing with stress and overwhelm is we think we have so much more to do, and we haven't prioritized it. Like having a daily, like every morning when I get up first, so I get up, I normally do a bit of jump in the pool, a bit of cold or whatever. Then I meditate, then I plan my day and I prioritize it, like what's most important that I need to get done, and everything's there. And then there's like a list down the bottom that things that I need to do at some point, you know? Yeah. And so then and I notice too, if I haven't got that there, I might be sitting there and go, okay, well, what's next? Like, what do I have to do next? But I just go to that and it's like, cool, this is what's next. There's no stress, there's no overwhelm, because it's there, it's easy. I've prioritized it. Yeah. So I think a planning comes into that as well. A lot of stress, overwhelm, and it comes from just a lack of planning, I believe. Yeah. Lack of planning, lack of prioritization.
Prioritization.
That's it. Yeah.
It's I fuck up a lot of words too.
And so then also we tell stories. We make it mean things more than what it is. The stress. You know, this is happening, which means this is going to happen. This is going to happen. We're down about 10 stories down this way. We're like, hey, come on, come back a bit. What's actually going on here? Yeah. Because we have funny thing. It's like, maybe someone sends you a text message saying we need to talk, whether it's, an employee or a partner or whatever. And then all of a sudden we create this big, massive story about it. And it's like, people are going to leave. What am I going to do? We're already making this big situation about it, getting stressed and overwhelmed about a simple text message that probably means nothing.
Yeah.
So I think the stories that we tell ourselves, we need to be mindful of them, because that creates a lot of stress we don't need. I was literally on a client session last night. One of the guys, he'd been divorced for 7 years, separation and everything. And his ex-partner came and said, I'm going to try and take half your super. And I was like, has a financial separation been done? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know for sure, but I'm like, I would potentially get some advice, because I don't think it's 7 years. Like, I don't think they can still come after money. And then he's like, I didn't even think of that. He's been stressing for weeks over it. I'm like, why?
Get some clarity.
Exactly. So this is where it's like clarity and being able to plan things as well. It just gets rid of the stress, because he was telling himself a big story about this.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing, is like, we got to stop telling our stories and go, what's the actual facts here? Like, what's actually going on?
Yeah.
What's true and what's the story?
So we have time management versus priority management, planning. We have figuring out what's important and why it's important.
Yep.
We have writing down your thoughts and feelings.
Yep.
Taking the open tabs, open loops, getting them out of your head. And then we have addressing the stories you have around everything.
Yep.
And that in itself is the formula to have a peaceful life when you really break it down. Like, that is night and day, the formula. I think a lot of men complicate this though. We have a client group of a mastermind client. They do about $500 million a year between all the clients. Very successful guys. Some have $200 million businesses, some have $1 million businesses. And we did a coaching session. There was 30 men on the call, and I gave them a framework every morning. Write these things down. How am I feeling? What am I thinking about? What's my targets? Every evening, what's my most important task tomorrow? What are my 3 highly important tasks tomorrow? Right?
Yep.
So I gave them a framework. I said, who's going to get it done? All 30 put their hands up. Who's getting it done today? All 30 put their hands up. We get on another call, and I'm like, who did it? 3 people put their hands up. And I said, who here feels like they're not where they want to be? Everyone puts their hand up. Who here feels like they're fed up and frustrated with not being where they want to be? Everyone put their hands up. Who here sucks at planning and strategy? Everyone put their hands up. I'm like, I gave you the fucking framework. You didn't follow it. And I think this speaks to so many men. We don't make this shit important.
Yeah.
We don't make it important. We have a strategy called testy. So the way I describe it is scrotum. The reason I say that is because it will stay in your mind and anyone listening. Big set of balls. So testy, testicles. Time, energy, and space to strategize and think. TESST.
I like it.
Time, energy, and space to strategize and think. I found in my marriage and my business and my health, you cannot beat the ROI of sitting down for an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours and just reflecting and planning.
Yeah.
You can't beat the ROI. Like, every quarter, plan the next quarter, reflect. Every month, plan the next, every week, every day. And I think a lot of guys just, they don't see the value of it. But it's like, if you have a shit marriage, if you have a business that's a prison, if you're feeling stressed and you're lacking control, the only way you're going to fix that is having a plan and a strategy. And that doesn't come out of thin air. You got to create it, right? Do you have any strategies for men to learn how to prioritize and plan, and how to unpack their thoughts and feelings and store their stories so they can actually have a plan each day? Like, what's your strategy for that?
Yeah. I think firstly, when it comes to the stories, is asking like, is it true? It's a common question. You probably heard it before.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, like saying like, is this story that I'm telling true?
Yeah.
What role am I playing here?
Yeah.
Am I playing a victim here? Am I playing, whatever else role it may be?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. I think too, coming back to what you were saying, if it's not important, we're not going to do it. So we need to maybe read stories of how planning helps people. So then we can see and hear about that of like, yeah, well, this person planned. And then if we talk in the context of business, this person spends every quarter planning and their business has gone from here to here.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, wow, that's the first little thing.
Yeah.
So then they start reading more examples like that. And they're like, maybe I should give this planning thing a bit of a go.
Yeah.
So rather than overlooking it, we kind of need to see like, why do we actually want to do it? Why is it
Why
there?
is it important?
Yeah.
Which is what you said earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then so if we then, it takes a bit of time, but coming through and being like, okay, so why is that important to you? How's it going to help your business, your relationship, your health, all of these things? and you start making a bit of a list, and then you'll get to, 10, 20, 30, 40, and you'll go, actually, I can see how much this is going to help me. And then you'll just do it more naturally.
Unless you get overwhelmed, in which case just go to the most important one, right?
Exactly.
Because a lot of guys, they put the to-do list down and freak out. That's such a good way of framing it, man. It's like, why is this important to you? And I'll give you an example right now. We are about to buy our 8th property.
Nice.
We're buying 4 more next year. So we'll have a $9 million property portfolio. I'm 33. Now, I do not say that to brag. We started 7 years ago. We bought one. We were paying ourselves minimum wage, and but we had a plan the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, how much equity will we have? Every weekend for an hour, I look at my finances. I've done that for 8 years. But people will look at that and say it's luck, or that like, he's a dickhead, he's buying all the property. I planned it. My wife and I are more connected than ever. Like, we are having sex 4 times a week. She's heavily pregnant. It's the best, right? And she respects me and appreciates it. But we planned it. We had a vision together. I reflected every week. When I was angry at her, I'd write down why I was angry, what my role was. So everything you just shared can create a life of abundance for you.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to paint the picture, if you were to go like, this is what your relationship will look like, this is what your business will look like, this is what your body and mind will look like, if you make time for this, like, paint that vivid picture of why it's important.
Yeah.
Paint that for me.
For me?
Yeah, like for a guy who's listening,
okay.
who's like, what would it look like if they actually made time for this?
Yeah.
What would their relationship look like? Their health, their body, their mind?
I think it would be better than ever expected.
Yeah.
Because we look at this thing and it's like a radar screen. Like, this is our world that we see right now, but there's so much that's off the radar, and so we're so focused on this, and maybe it might take time or all these things. And so it's hard to see off that. Whereas if we just start doing things and we see little results, our radar screen is going to get bigger and bigger, or it's kind of going to go everywhere.
What's the end of the radar? Like, talk to me, like, relationships. What's the pinnacle if you do this stuff? Because you and I both know, but the listener, I don't think, sees the value.
I think it's freedom.
Yeah.
It's freedom in everything, freedom to be mentally and emotionally free, but also financially free, also relationship freedom, to have the business that we desire to have.
Yeah.
I think there is no limit. Like, that end goal can literally be whatever you want when you actually start doing it. Like, find me someone who's super successful who hasn't done the work.
Yeah.
Unless they may have got lucky winning some kind of lottery or something, but still they're probably going to lose it quite quick, as you know.
Yeah, it's not fulfilling either.
No.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like any picture that anyone can hold in mind, like that's what they can create just through doing the work. And I always say too, it's like, some people might not want to go, that takes a lot of time and everything, but if you just commit to 5 years and give it like 5 years, the difference that it will make in your life is crazy. In 10 years time from just committing, it probably won't even take 5 years, but even 12 months, like I think we underestimate what we can actually get done in terms of that because of the planning and stuff. And it's like, you can create the life that you want, like the big goals that we want. It's there.
It's 100% there. It's waiting for us, but most men don't have the courage to take the actions required. You and I both know that if you do the right things enough times, magic begins to happen. And in 12 months, if you have the right plan, the right coaching, the right support, it could be you, it could be me, it could be anyone. Just find someone that's good. It doesn't matter. Just someone. Invest in yourself. But, I've seen clients who within a year have achieved 4 to 5 to 6 years of growth. Their business quadruples. They fix their marriages for broke for 20 years and 8 weeks. It doesn't have to take long. But if you do it for 5 years with the right plan, the right strategy, the right reflection, the right coaching, you're unstoppable. Like, start with a year, move on to 5, and you will become the best husband, father, and man you can be.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to be the best because most men are not very strong.
No.
They're weak physically and mentally, and it's sad, but it's the reality of the world. It puts you on that top 0.1% of men. So this has been a fucking insightful conversation, brother. I love the metaphors, analogies. The piss pool is fucking gold. No pun intended. What's 1 or 2 last bits of advice you want to give a man to create freedom in his marriage, in his career or business, in his health, to really step into his power and develop himself in an advanced way?
Yep. I would say if we're not changing, we're choosing is the first thing. To understand that. So if something's not changing how we want it to be, we're choosing it to be how it is. And then that's taking responsibility, as I said first. So we need to understand and we need to reflect too of like, okay, what's working, what's not working, have a bit of an audit on ourselves as well. And then that'll allow us to start creating the life that we want. I think a lot of us too, we set targets and timeframes that are unrealistic. And we have to understand that our beliefs create reality. So if we don't, it's proven by quantum physics. So if we don't 100% believe that that's going to happen, then that's what we need to work on. And literally, if you tell yourself every single day that you're going to be everything that you want, whatever someone might want, then they'll get it, And so my biggest thing is just keep doing the work, keep it a daily consistent habit, and it will compound, and that's the work of mentally, emotionally, physically, all those types of things. And you'll be surprised how fast it adds up,
Love that. If you're not changing, you're choosing. So if you are not where you want to be right now, take some ownership of that. It's not necessarily your fault, but it's your choice. And don't sit here and say you want more from life and not choose something different.
Yeah.
And if you are ready to choose, fucking do something about it. Take action.
Yeah.
Brother, it's been absolutely amazing to have you here. Thank you so much. We'll have to get you back on again. Appreciate you, brother. Anything else you want to share?
No, I just appreciate you. Thanks for the conversation. It's been amazing, and loved what you're doing too. I think for the men's work that we're doing, it's still very like, fuck off, I don't need that. Or, we're slowly getting there.
Yeah.
So I think, between everyone doing it, it's like, we're honestly going to change the world. Hey, like everyone going together. So yeah.
Appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. We'll see you guys for the next episode. Bye.
If you're getting value from this podcast episode and you want to learn how you can have a better relationship, a better marriage, you can be a better father, husband, the man your family deserves, then it's very fucking hard to do that just by listening and getting fed information. Sure, this is valuable, but what's much more valuable is having a custom roadmap and a custom plan. And that's exactly what we do here at The Empowered Man. So if you want to learn how to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, and find work-life balance, then that's exactly what we want to help you with. We'll help you make more money, working less hours, have that life you deserve by becoming unfuckwithable. Just tap the link down below in the description and go and book a coaching session with my Empowered Man team. On that session, we'll build your custom Empowered Man roadmap to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, find work-life balance, and have the life you deserve. Click the link down below right now.